Yay.
Okay, while we're waiting to start, there's 4 of us from spring conference on the call. What are we wearing for the margarita lips? I mean, for the club, Saturday club outfit? Does anybody know?
All I know is we have Cheeseburgers in Paradise as our lip sync song. So
Well, that's Saturday night. I'm thinking it says Saturday day club attire. I didn't know what we were doing.
okay.
I had the same
Yeah.
question.
Let's work on this offline.
Okay.
Okay.
We still have people coming in, so I think we need to give it another minute or two.
Sounds great. We're not sure how many folks are coming. Is that right? Just whoever signs in.
Yeah, we didn't have RSVPs for this meeting, so
Totally fine. Just want to make sure. Yeah, maybe we should wait another minute just to make sure everyone who wants to be here.
yeah.
That's it.
Did you see that Maria says she's here, but not on video?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I don't want to wait too much longer because I want to give as much time to our speakers as possible. So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Lori Reed. I'm president-elect of Soroptimist International Phoenix, currently working on the Valleywise Replacement Hospital project. Let's go ahead and I'm going to call out members' names. If you would introduce yourself with your name, your current title, and if you're retired, what your former title was. So let's start with Lisa.
Lisa Farrar, retired mortgage banker and fitness studio owner. And I've been a Soroptimist for 8 years, I think.
Margie.
Margie Burke, Chief Finance and Operating Officer at the Desert Botanical Garden. I've been Soroptimist for over 24 years.
Wow.
And I am currently serving as the Golden West Region Governor for our region.
Lee.
Lee Wales, formerly a director with Bull Information Systems and a development officer with VSUW. And I think I might have met both of you ladies. I went to a presentation at Hidden Hills with Judy Schweikert.
With Judy and Stephanie Simachek, probably. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, we're there.
I learned a lot. Yeah.
You might hear some of this similar things, but it never hurts to hear it again, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Henrietta.
Henrietta Speedy, former CFO for Engineering Services, now retired, and actually a Soroptimist member for 30 plus years, maybe 35 plus years.
Frankie. You're on mute, Frankie. Okay, while we're waiting for Frankie to come off mute, let's do Susan.
I'm Susan Bolton. I'm a judge on the United States District Court here in Arizona, and I've been a Soroptimist for over 40 years.
Yay, good for us. Joan.
Hi, Joan Burke. Thank you too for coming. And I'm a lawyer who practices in the communication space, and I've been a Soroptimist for like 1.5 years, maybe almost 2 years.
Yay. Peggy.
Peggy Wentzman, formerly in banking and financial services, and I've been a member of this club for 20 years.
Diane.
Hi, everyone. Diane Yamashita. I think I have the distinction of being the newest member since January, and I spent 36 years retired as a senior manager for a high-risk insurance carrier, and I'm very much enjoying being a part of this group.
Mary Schroeder.
Well, I can't see anybody, but I'm Mary Schroeder. I can see you now, Lord. I'm Mary Schroeder, and I am a senior judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit.
And Maria?
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Mathis, and I am the Chief Deputy at the Bankruptcy Court. It's nice to see everyone.
We have someone on iPhone. Can you introduce
Hello,
yourself?
yes, this is Karen Seifert, and I
There we
am a
go.
guest of Lisa. And I had attended one meeting, just a business meeting last week, and I'm just learning all about Soroptimist International and might be joining your group. I'm
Awesome.
a
Thank
clinical
you.
nurse. I should say I'm a clinical nurse specialist, is my occupation.
And thank you for joining us again today, Karen.
Thank you.
Danielle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, I hope I've impressed everyone. Lisa's laughing. Okay, because if I don't blame you if you don't want me in your club. My name is not Daniel Nussbaum. My son took my computer. This is why I'm late. I didn't know last night. And he's Daniel Nussbaum. My name is Polly Morris, and I have no idea what he did to my computer that it's showing his name now. But Lisa, I've been introduced to Lisa. And again, my first name is Polly, Polly. I know that's a little unusual. And I've met Lisa and spoken to her quite a few times now. And I used to be a member of the club 40 years ago in Scottsdale. And just by chance, I came across one of your events and started to know Lisa. So I'm retired. My last company was a home care company in Scottsdale.
Glad you're here, Polly.
Thank you, Lisa. I
Thank
had
you,
to go
Ryan.
find my computer, which was in my son's apartment, and then go bring it. So forgive me. I hope I've impressed everyone.
Let's see, Frankie.
Nice to have you here.
Very
Thank you.
nice. Frankie, are you able to go off mute and introduce yourself? Still can't hear you. Well, I'll introduce her. This is Frankie James. She is retired from healthcare customer service insurance. No? Close? She's been a Soroptimist forever, and we're lucky to have her. Okay, let's get on with our program. I am so excited to present to you today two regional coordinators from Save Our Schools Arizona Network. Jen Senatore, did I get that right?
That's probably the traditional way. We just have been saying senator.
Senator, and Lita Devliger.
It's close. It's Devliger.
Okay, well, I equally butchered your name, so equal opportunity. Save Our Schools Arizona Network has a roadshow that they put on for the community, and so I've invited them here today to tell us what they do and what we can do to help save our schools. So let me turn it over to Jen.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. Lita's going to go ahead and get our slide shared here. Perfect. While she's doing that, I can introduce myself. Jen Senator, former public school teacher. Now I'm working here at Save Our Schools Arizona Network as a regional volunteer coordinator on our community action team. And Lita, do you want to take a moment to share about yourself?
Yes, I think that's on the slide. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Am I unmuted? Sorry, I always get confused when I am presenting and then I have to talk and it looks so different. It's been a while since I've done this. I did teach online for a year, but it's been a bit. So my name is Lita Devliger. I live in the East Valley. I live in Gilbert. I am a born and raised Arizonan though. I grew up in Cottonwood, went to NAU, and I have lived in Gilbert now for a long time, 20 something years. I have two kids. My oldest graduated from high school last year and is a is now a sophomore at ASU. He finished the year. And then I have a freshman in high school that has another week of school left. She'll be a sophomore in high school. I am also a former third grade teacher, and I'm very passionate about all things Arizona, and especially our schools and our kids.
Absolutely.
And so as far as an organization, Save Our Schools Arizona Network is a nonpartisan community-based organization. And our goal is to make sure that Arizona has strong schools, because we know strong schools mean strong communities, strong job market, employee base for jobs, and a strong state. So the most important thing to us, and it's really interesting because I work a little bit in social media as well as coordinating. And so I have a lot of conversations online, and the foundation of why we do this work is because we believe that every child should have access to a well-resourced classroom in their neighborhood, where they can walk to school if they need to, or be bused to that school. They don't have to go outside of their boundaries in order to find one. Whether they do or not, that's a choice, but we want one there so they have that option for every single kid in our entire state. We know that our public schools provide a lot of wraparound services. There are many families in Arizona that are food insecure. And when kids are at school and they are food insecure, they get breakfast and lunch. So that's 2 meals a day that our schools will provide. Transportation to school, if they're not within walking distance, they will get bused to school, and many, many more wraparound services and community events. I don't know if you've ever been to an event, but like when I was teaching, I had students and they would invite me to their basketball games or whatever. And half the time the basketball games were in our elementary school gym, and they weren't affiliated with the school, but they're the center for a lot of community events as well. And we know that not only do public schools mean a lot to families, they draw people into communities. People move to communities specifically for the schools, and they raise those property values, right? So it's like it's a cyclical effect. It helps everybody when we have strong public schools. And we already talked about how they improve the economy and help businesses, which then in turn helps our whole state. And not only that, but when you think about the investment in our public schools, they are the best investment in our economic future, because most children, especially now when you see like having a college freshman and having gone through the college process, a lot of those students stay right here in our state, but they're not always going to stay if they don't know that they can then turn around and have a job in this state or raise a family in this state as well. So like I said, it's like kind of like that cyclical effect. If we want to maintain people and keep them here in our state, we got to start with our very foundation. That's our little kids in elementary school, and work all the way up. A lot of people get confused about this, so we like to clarify. We use, when we're talking about public schools, we use 92% on awful lot. And so that might confuse people. So we like to give this chart. So district public schools are what people think of when we're thinking of traditional public schools. So that's the one in the neighborhood. In Arizona, charter schools have been around quite a while. Charter schools are also publicly funded schools. They are funded by Arizona's taxpayer dollars, just like our public schools. So they have the same effects. When we talk about vouchers in the future, we will include them as our public schools because it has the same effects on them. And then if you look there on the chart, private schools make up for about 5%, and homeschoolers are about 3% in Arizona. This is one thing that makes me incredibly sad, and it does because we're here now, but not just because we're here now. We've been here for a really long time. Arizona ranks 49th, and that's out of 51 because it's 50 states in DC. So there's only 2 states behind us. I believe is it Idaho or Utah? I can't remember. And anyways, I think it's those 2, but 2 states behind us as far as per student funding. And unfortunately, Arizona hasn't made it out of the 45th or above in I think 2 decades. It's been a really long time. So you can see the numbers. I don't have to read them all to you, but it would take $5.5 billion a year to get us to the national average, not to number 1, just to right in the middle. So we have a lot of work to do when it comes to funding. Does money matter? You'll hear a lot of people say that, that money doesn't matter, that we have, bloated admin, but money can do a lot of things. We have the 2nd most crowded classroom sizes in the United States. I know when I was a classroom teacher, I had 29 third graders shoved into a portable. It was a very small, very tight space. I know my kids have had class sizes of up to 40 students, depending on the class in high school. And that is not the norm. And you'll see averages panned out differently, but yeah, Arizona has the second most crowded classrooms in the United States, which to me as a teacher, I know I can be far more effective when I have less kids, right? You can have a lot more attention, a lot more one-on-one, and meet kids' needs a lot better. Arizona teacher salaries, again, have been ranked very low. They're in the bottom 5. They've actually gone up a little bit, but that's still nothing to brag about. The teacher retention crisis has hit Arizona hard. I believe Arizona has the most classrooms with uncertified teachers in the country. Our students counselor ratio actually has changed. We are not the second worst anymore. We are now the worst in the country. It's supposed to be what they want it to be is 1 to about 240 students, and Arizona is 1 to 2 to, I believe it's like 750 students. So 3 times what it should be is what we have. Under Kathy Hoffman, it was second worst. And just recently new data came out and we're back down to being the worst in the country. And then our school facilities has been a longstanding issue. And we've been in the hole for a while on that one as well. So yes, money does make a difference. It's impossible to see how it wouldn't make a difference in some way for our students and our educators. So, but we're going to lead all the way. All of this is going to lead us into vouchers. We haven't quite got there yet, but Arizona, recently the JLBC came out with a report. It started with, we had a surplus this year. At the beginning of the year, it was like, oh, there's going to be a surplus, the projections. And then it started as more and more people started pulling ESA vouchers, our surplus started dwindling and the flat tax went into effect. And we now are facing an $835 million budget shortfall this year and a projected $9 million budget for shortfall next year. And I actually think, again, since this slideshow was made, which was not very long ago, the numbers have gone up. We're well over, we're close to, I think 1.8 billion is the number between this year and next year. And those are the 2 biggest indicators for that is the flat tax that went into effect and the ESA voucher program. Our budget, although we are one of the biggest states, we have a lot, our population is higher. Our budget is the 48th smallest in the United States. So we will hear people a lot talk about the education is over half the budget, which is true. It is, but our budget is tiny for the number of people that we have living in this state. I don't know like if it's for this year, but I do know about 2 years ago, maybe 3, our budget was the same size as Wyoming, and Wyoming doesn't even have 1 million people. And we're pushing 8, I think, million. I know we're over 7 million. So think about that differences. We have the same size budget as a state with, 6 million more people in it. So that's something to think about as well. And we already talked about how we're 5.5 billion behind a year in education. I'm going to throw it to Jen to tell you a little bit about vouchers.
So you might have heard a little bit about ESA vouchers. ESA is short for Empowerment Scholarship Accounts. And they're public taxpayer dollars that are issued by ADE through state-provided debit cards. So it was ruled unconstitutional for the state to send that money directly to schools. And instead, they found a workaround where they just send it to families to then be the middleman that sent it. It can be used for private school, micro school, and homeschool expenses, but not charter schools because of their public funding. And if you don't spend all of the money that they provide to you, you can squirrel it away and use it for university or community college tuition, which is, of course, not an option that's available to public school students. This graphic here, kind of illustrates our perspective of the impact that vouchers are having on public education, really, just stripping away the funding. And I can see how, it would sound good on its surface to be able to spend some of these things on things like tuition, but it goes to a lot of expenses that many of us wouldn't consider to be educational, or that would be maybe loosely connected to education. There are some examples on the screen here of things that have been purchased with ESA money in the past, including bounce houses, espresso machines, snow cone machines. They had to clarify in their guidance about like the size of chicken coop that you're allowed to purchase with taxpayer money. you know, all sorts of private lessons, including like luxury driving lessons and, you know, fancy cars. Basically, as long as you can provide a curriculum to support it, whether that's an AI generated curriculum or, you know, there's no requirement that there's any quality to the curriculum, just say that it's necessary for you to have that. And here's a little video of a news story sharing a little more about this.
I'm gonna hope it works. Usually it does, but sometimes it doesn't always play. So we'll try, and if it doesn't, we'll just continue.
Arizona's ESA Director John Ward
you all hear
sat
it?
down with me to discuss allowable expenses and the approval process. Among the $2 million in music expenses, we found some people buying pianos for their homes.
These are. Oh, the audio stopped working.
Piano, baby grand. We may not approve that as a luxury item.
Not luxury pianos, but what about learning to drive in a luxury car? A Scottsdale company does that. ESA paid for 77 kids, averaging more than $800 each. Should our tax dollars be going to a family so their kid can learn how to drive in a Tesla?
So while you may think this may not be a good use of that family's ESA funding, at the end of the day, they get a fixed amount of money. If that's how they're going to choose to use it, that's their prerogative.
And their prerogative runs the gamut. Here's what ABC 15 tallied. $3,400 spent on a single transaction at a golf store. A nearly $10,000 transaction at a sewing machine company. 34 purchases at a company that sells food freeze drying appliances. More than 100 passes to the Snowball Ski Resort. More than $350,000 spent on Ninja Warrior training centers, trampoline parks, and climbing gyms, and more than $1.2 million on martial arts instruction.
The vast majority of purchases that are coming through are completely allowable.
I think we really have a right to know what's happening here.
Beth Lewis with Save Our Schools has campaigned against ESAs, but ABC 15's data analysis is the first time she's seeing aggregate numbers on what ESAs are paying for. And Lewis says this shows ESAs are not equitable.
It shows what a two-tiered system this is for haves and have-nots, right? Like the public school kids have no resources and are really, really struggling. And then these families can use vouchers to pay for jujitsu while the rest of us pay out of pocket.
She says taxpayers and voters will question whether ESAs are wasteful.
They do not want to pay for a piano in everybody's living room when they can pay for a piano in a local high school that serves 400 kids a year for 20 years.
Yeah, and I think that last quote really speaks to the, you know, thinking about like the economies of scale here, right? That you can invest in these items for individual families that won't benefit a lot of kids, or you can purchase it for, you know, a school or a district where it will continue to impact a wide variety of students over time. You may have seen a lot of these headlines, but there are a few on the screen here. Our Attorney General, Chris Mays, wanted to make sure families were aware that when they accept school voucher funds, they are to go to a private school, they're giving up some of their students' legal rights if their students have disabilities or would be otherwise protected with a 504 or an IEP in a public school. Those schools are not under any obligation to honor those or to provide accommodations to them. Some might choose to, but they're not required to, even though they're taking public dollars. On the bottom right corner, you can see some recent data shows that a majority of the students who are applying under the Universal ESA program come from some of the highest income zip codes in the state. So, and many of them are students who were never enrolled in public school in the first place. So they're a new expense, and also often from families who already were affording private school, and are now basically using this as a $7,000, $8,000 coupon to lower their cost of tuition. And in fact, a lot of private schools are increasing their tuition accordingly. You can see when the universal expansion happened that we've been experiencing, it appears to maybe be exponential costs for the program. And initially when they sold the program to us, they said it would cost, was it $66 million, Lita? And now it's,
I believe,
somewhere around there, and it is far exceeded that, and is continuing to just blast through the budget. Oh, here it is on this slide. So you can see in fiscal year 23, they projected, the JBLC projected 33 million. It actually cost 550 million. For this year, they projected 65 million. It's almost to $1 billion, or projected to be almost $1 billion now at this point. So anyone who is concerned about the responsible use of taxpayer funds should be concerned about this.
Yes, so the impacts are far and wide. And one thing that has been, the numbers jumped around a little bit. It's been as low as like 65 and as high as into the 80s. And this stands true for other states that have implemented universal voucher programs, although Arizona's is the most expansive and that has the least accountability in the entire country. So 75%, in some cases more, some cases less, it depends on the district, but it's pretty high everywhere. Of ESA applicants were already enrolled in private school or homeschooling, meaning that their families could already afford that choice. And it's an entirely new cost to the state. So how funding works is, you know, students are enrolled in a school, public or charter school, and on the 100th day, that student is funded. I don't know if a lot of people don't know that. And so if a student is not enrolled in that school on that 100th day, they're not funded. Whether they come to school on the 101st day, then that public school is educating that student for free the rest of the school year. If that makes any sense. Or if the student leaves, if they're there for the first 90 days and they leave before the 100th day, they're not getting paid for that student for that 90 days that student was there. So it's kind of a tricky thing, and a lot of people talk about this. And so a lot of that funding shifts based on that. Anyway, the vast majority of these vouchers are going to the more affluent neighborhoods, more affluent school districts. You can see a breakdown. We've been posting on social media breakdowns by district, like it's the percentage of kids that have never been in public school and the amount of money it's costing that district. And it's very interesting to see. It's districts like Scottsdale and like Deer Valley, certain areas definitely have more students enrolling in this program. And when we see the more students, it's generally a higher percentage that have never been to public school. I believe the one we're posting today is Scottsdale, and 85% of kids that take universal vouchers in Scottsdale have never been in a public school. So almost all of them.
And Scottsdale is to that last bullet point on that previous,
yes,
is a non-state aid district. So they don't, because they are able to cover so much of their expenses with property taxes, they don't get state aid. And so any student enrolling in those district boundaries is an entirely new cost to the state as well, because the state hadn't been contributing to funding for that district.
Which is why we're seeing such a huge numbers when it comes to the state deficit.
And a huge impact on the budget for sure. Mm-hmm.
So essentially what it does is it creates a two-tiered system, the haves and the have-nots. So like when you're going to a private school, most private schools they don't have free and reduced lunch programs. They don't have busing to their school. So a parent has to be able to provide transportation. They have to be able to provide food. A lot of schools don't have the wraparound services or before and after school care that kids need that they get at public schools. So it really creates there already is a divide in our society, right? We all know that. This just makes it wider and much bigger divide. And what we also see is a huge disparity because our rural districts and that's all there is, right? Not only is that the only choice for kids to go to school, there might be a charter here or there might be a private school a half hour, an hour away. But they're also the largest employers. So this is not just a student thing, this is an employer thing, especially for our rural districts where the schools can employ 50% of the town. So that's something that a lot of people don't think about, and it's another issue that it causes. They do not statistically benefit low-income students. As Jen mentioned earlier, this program was initially sold to make it equal so everybody could have access and so low-income students could get out of failing schools. But what we're seeing is that's just not what's happening because low-income students don't have access to those things we talked about, busing and food and all those things. They need and rely on their public schools for things other than just the education. I know a lot of people want to say, oh, we just need to go for reading and writing and math, but that's not the reality. Our schools are a social safety net. And so we have to face what the reality of these schools and not just what people are saying. And they defund our schools. We averaged it out, and this was earlier, it's gone up since then, but it's an average of about $300,000 per school for every public school in Arizona that they're losing out on due to the cost of the ESA voucher program. So it brings us to this. We hear school choice, parental choice. Arizona has long had school choice. We've had charter schools. You go to some states in the East, there are no charter schools. There's no such thing. And we have open enrollment. There are states that do not have open enrollment, meaning if I live in Gilbert and I want to take my kids to school in Mesa, you have to apply, but like you can enroll your child if they have room in any school you want to. Within reality. So like, and my daughter is open enrolled. I'll tell you, we live in Gilbert. She goes to a Gilbert school, but she's open enrolled into a different high school than we're zoned for. And my son went to like a magnet school. It was a public school, but it was a magnet school. So he was theoretically open enrolled as well. So we've long had parent choice when it comes to schools, and parents can always choose to homeschool and can always choose to go attend private school. But the reality is when you're using vouchers, it's those private schools get to choose. They can deny anybody they want. They're considered a business. They are not a public entity like public schools are, and they can choose to deny or kick out or turn people away for any reason they want to. Obviously, they have federal laws, but there are a lot of very religious schools that have in their policies that you cannot enroll in the school if you are LGBTQIA or if your parents are. They have them in their standards. So it's really this, and most of them do not, as Jen mentioned earlier, do not have services for students with IEPs and 504s. So they number one, either won't accept your child if they know they have that, or they might accept them and then not give them service for their needs. And there's no accountability measures in place for that, if that makes sense. So there's no ADE, there's no governing body or anybody looking over them to make sure that they're providing the services that they're saying they're providing. There's no testing or any of that good stuff. So
our colleague Raquel has a really great story. She shares about when her kids are grown now, but when her kids were starting kindergarten, she lived right down the street from a private school. She had the means to send them. And so she brought them, her twins. She has a boy and a girl. And she brought them in and they were like, hey, we'd be happy to accept your daughter. We are not able to accept your son. And she's like, but I chose you. Like they absolutely had the right to, or the ability to reject one of her kids and not the other. And she's like, no, that's not happening. And so she brought them to her local district public school, enrolled them. That's where they found that her son had some learning disabilities, which probably is a factor in why the private school denied them. And that was way before ESA. So she was just shocked that she's like, but I chose you. Like, I thought it was a parent's choice, and really it's up to the schools to decide who they accept and who they don't.
Can I stop you real quick?
Yes.
You've used IEP and 504
Oh, sorry.
a couple
Thank
times.
you.
Could you
Yes,
explain what
teachers
those
love
are?
their acronyms. So IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. It is a legal document that is built with a team of teachers, parents, often students, that outlines what specialized instruction they need if they have an identified disability, and also any accommodations they might get in the classroom. Like some students might need a copy of notes or extra time on assessments or things like that. So basically to help support students with disabilities, that is a legally binding document, and the team meets each year to update it and make sure that the students' needs are being met. And that's required by federal law and is not required in private schools because they're not public, even though some of them now are taking public dollars. And a 504 refers to Section 504, again, protecting people who are disabled or who have the perception of being disabled. So another way that we protect our special education or disabled students in school. Thanks for asking for that clarification.
Thank you.
And that runs the gamut. I actually have my teenage daughter that's a freshman, has an IEP and has since she's in 3rd grade. So I'm happy if you have more questions after, I'm happy to answer what that looks like. But yeah, like we meet every year. We go over accommodations based on her, abilities or lack of ability, whatever, whatever you say, her different abilities. And we sit and meet and we discuss what classes are best for her, Does she need notes? Because note taking can be a challenge for kids. Small group testing. There's so many different things, and they vary because she's a low needs IEP student, but they're very high. Like the school she goes to has a classroom where they're wheelchair bound, they're nonverbal. So they vary widely. But they're specialized for each individual child. It's a lot of time and energy and work that goes into them. And since we're on that subject, I'm going to share this. I don't think it's in our slideshow, but one thing that's recently come to light is that with the ESA dollars, anybody, the universal can pull an ESA and it's about $7,500 to $8,000. But if you have a diagnosed disability and higher needs, the state is required to then give you more money for those needs. And so what's happening is a lot of ESA voucher families who have never been in public school and don't intend to go to public school will go to those local public schools and ask for testing, because if they get a diagnosis or qualify for an IEP, they get more money. But what happens is then the resources that are meant, the teachers that are hired for the kids at the school that attend the school, then are going to these ESA families who are not paying for it. It's coming out of the school's budget. I know Deer Valley, I believe, said they spent about $500,000 this year on non-district students, and they have to. It's a federal mandate that you have to test anybody in your district. But with this ESA program, it's totally changing what that looks like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's no reimbursement for those services, and we're already just short-staffed across the state, really across the country, with qualified special education teachers. And so the fact that like they're being pulled away from their day job essentially to evaluate students who aren't on their official caseload is having an impact as well.
Yeah, it is. And that's kind of a newer issue that's come up that is just another one of the snowballing issues that nobody really probably thought of before. Anyway, so this kind of just shows you, it's just a great visual, in my opinion. It's one of my favorites, only because it just makes you realize, like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Arizona was the first to implement a universal voucher program. I actually was sitting in the gallery when this was pushed through. Arizona voters voted universal ESA vouchers down on a 2-to-1 basis in 2018. Every time in every state universal vouchers have ever been voted on by the public, they have been voted down. Not once have they ever been passed or supported. The public widely supports public schools. However, before he left office, former Governor Ducey and the Arizona legislature were able to get people to flip that they had not previously been able to. And they did push through this voucher program in June of 2022, and it was signed into law in September of 22. And it was purposely, there was many legislators that introduced safeguards like income caps and different things to testing, making sure teachers had to be certified or fingerprint clearance. There are no safety or accountability measures in our voucher program at all in Arizona, not one. And that's one of our big pushes right now. We're actually encouraging people to reach out to representatives and ask them to make sure that that's part of our budget negotiations, is making sure that there is some voucher reform accountability added into these ESA vouchers.
I think people are surprised to learn that like you can open up a micro school or operate a private school, and there's no unless you choose to, there's no requirement to have like fingerprint clearance cards or background checks, or if you're running it out of your home, there's nobody that comes to make sure that the environment is safe, that you don't have weapons or open paint cans or anything like that could be dangerous for kids. Like there's a lot of just basic safety concerns that we have. So there's been some unexpected and maybe some that were predicted consequences of the universal voucher program. One is grift. There's a lot of people who saw this as an opportunity to make some money. There are reputable private schools, but there are also plenty of people who just open a private school, pop it up overnight in a strip mall. Like I mentioned, a micro school is basically it's a school where you start with just a small group of students. You can run it out of your home. One popular provider for that is Prenda, and basically they provide an online curriculum that students use. So they come and do virtual school at your house, and you can, do a little volcano science experiment with them and call it a day. But there's no like teaching going on. You don't have to have any kind of certification for that. And those type of locations, even charter schools, really can close at any time and leave families without anywhere to go. And there's no recourse if something like that happens for them to recover their funding. Also, like I mentioned before, private schools have been often increasing their tuition costs in correlation with the ESA vouchers, so that families who could have afforded it with that voucher maybe can't now, and so they're still pricing people out who don't have the same level of income. And charter schools are opening private schools. I know of I'm thinking of one in particular that was a charter school network, and as soon as the voucher was expanded universally, they're like, oh, also we're opening this private Christian school, and so like redirecting there so that there's fewer layers of accountability for them in that regard.
And you don't hear about this a lot, but literally just the other day, Rachel, who we work with, her I think she said her brother's kids go to a charter school, and literally 2 weeks ago they went to go to school and there was a sign on the door saying it was closed. And there's no repercussions for there's nothing. And that's a charter school, but private schools can do it. These micro schools can do it. You hear about, because we're in this world, we hear about this stuff a lot more than other people, but it's happened in like Florida. Often it happens. So they just take the money and they're not responsible, and there's no checks and balances for them, and they just roll with it. And then eventually they close because they can't stay open and pay the bills.
It's such a shame. It's so disruptive to kids and their education when that happens. And we're already seeing a lot of the things listed here, a lot of impacts on our schools. The first one, public school closures. A lot of the work I do is in the Paradise Valley area. And you might have heard that they recently had to make the hard decision to close 3 schools. They actually had proposed 4 next year. These were high performing schools that were beloved in their community. They weren't failing public schools. I went to the community forums where parents were in tears talking about how huge an impact the teachers and staff at those schools had on their kids, and begging them not to close them. And because of their declining enrollment, partially due to ESAs, they didn't have a choice. Like, the board has to balance their budget, and nobody on that governing board wanted to vote for those. Like, it hurts, but that's the decision that they felt like they needed to make, and they still have to cut more money out of their budget. Even with a teacher shortage, we're projecting to see teacher layoffs, which is kind of hard to wrap your head around. But when there's cuts to the budget, they have to figure out how to make those up. A lot of districts are moving to 4-day school weeks to try to cut expenses on utilities. You'll see we've had high class sizes, but we project that they'll continue to get worse as we have schools cut it, like their funding. We've struggled to keep across the state bus drivers. A lot of routes are running like double, triple runs. So kids are just waiting to, get picked up or brought home late. And a lot of the programs that really make our schools strong and help support kids, the whole kid, are being cut because there's not money for it. It's really sad.
And these are all like real examples. Like in Flagstaff, bus routes were just totally closed, and parents were told you have to find a way to get your kid to school. In Mesa, schools were closed, or in Paradise Valley, schools were closed. In Mesa, they got rid of the entire online program. I have a friend that has been teaching online since COVID, and they have hundreds of kids that love that program, but they just can't afford to keep it. So they're getting rid of the whole program. And these are all choice programs too, right? Like, just because they're public schools doesn't mean they're not choices parents are making. So, these choices of ESAs are taking away other choices from huge numbers of kids that maybe don't have the extra choice to go to that private school.
Mm-hmm. On this slide, there's a QR code, which I know is kind of hard when you're possibly already on a phone, but it will link you to our SOS Arizona Network report that we released last November. And it's around 30 pages long, and it really goes into depth on the impacts here a year into the voucher expansion. And if you're, into numbers and reading like we are, you will probably enjoy some of the information in there.
Comprehensive research. So if you like digging in and diving deeper, it's a great resource. And it's been shared by lots of bits and pieces have been shared by lots of publications all over the country, but it's quite a great piece of work. I did not do it. I just think it's amazing.
We have some proposed solutions, which unfortunately haven't been able to move very far in our current legislative situation. But Governor Hobbs had proposed that we start implementing fingerprint background checks for any, ESA vendors that are taking public tax dollars. That was a non-starter. Protecting rights for students with disabilities, like those 504 and IEP plans that we talked about before, having some kind of reins on the type of expenses that people could have, like the luxury expenses, or just having more audit authority, or more just financial reporting on how those funds are being used. The video we showed you, the reason they were able to get those line items is because they pulled a public records request, and it took a long time to even get that information. But it's not like, I know our public school district budgets are incredibly publicly available and transparent, and so it just feels like very different that they have to search so much. She suggested or proposed that we have some kind of cap on how much private schools can raise their tuition year over year, because we saw them increasing it in the amounts that the vouchers were awarded for, to have some kind of minimum requirements for the people who are teaching in those schools, to have transparency around what rights parents are giving up or students are giving up when they switch from a public school to one of these options, and also just to have them report their graduation rates and absenteeism rates the same as other schools that take public dollars have to do. And one thing she suggested that would save $250,000 a year is just to have those students be required to at least attempt and attend a public school for 100 days to make sure it's actually not for them, and then have the ability at that point. Because like we mentioned before, a majority of these folks have never stepped foot in a public school. They don't know whether it would meet their child's needs or not. And so that was, all of those were proposed, and none of them really got anywhere, unfortunately, so far.
So there's some polling. There's some, this one's, again, this was Stand for Children that did this polling, and this is about 3 months old. We actually just have new polling from the Center for Arizona. They're both nonpartisan organizations that are highly respected. And this number is actually 79% on the newest poll. That believe that Arizona public schools need funding. They all bounce around. They range from 79 all the way up to 87% on, I believe it's 87% of people believe that any school or tutor that takes ESA voucher dollars should have the same accountability standards as public schools. If you take public dollars, you should have the same standards. So fingerprint clearance, reporting, testing, so on and so forth. And 80% believe that our public schools need more funding. So like I said, this data is, even though it's recent and it would be considered good data, we have newer data that's showing that it's shifting even more. By and large, Arizonans and people across the country want strong public schools because everybody attends to public schools. It's very nonpartisan. Democrats, Republicans, independents, kids from all socioeconomic backgrounds attend public schools. Just because most of the people that attend private schools have a higher socioeconomic status does not mean that there aren't a lot of those in the higher socioeconomic status that also attend our public schools as well, right? If 92% of kids are attending our public schools, you're going to have the gamut. So our public schools are diverse and varied, and people support them and want them well funded because they know that it contributes to our whole state. This is more of our we did not have an updated question on this because it was 2 different polls, but this one's a little funky the way it's worded. So the majority of Arizonas oppose ESA vouchers, meaning 60%, but then they went further, and you know how you have those questions where oppose, strongly oppose. So 60% oppose, 48% strongly oppose. So like so that 60% is probably people that they're like, yeah, I think they're probably not the best thing. Something needs to happen. And that 48% is probably people like, I just want them to go away. 60% might be like, well, that other 12%, I should say, are people that be like, yeah, they either need to go away or be hugely reformed, if that makes sense. And then on the reverse side, people that support them, 30% total support, and then 18 strongly support. So that 18% would be people that are like, yeah, I want it to be universal. I don't care. They don't need to be any standards. And then that 30% probably, that other 12% probably falls in that area where they're like, yeah, I think vouchers are good, but maybe not universal, or maybe not, maybe we need to have all these other ramifications like background checks and testing and all the other things, if that makes sense. That's the same thing. It's just a pie chart for you. I'm not going to read all the data. I know you all can see that. And if you have questions, feel free to interrupt and ask. We've talked about this a lot. Like I said, it's very bipartisan. It's across party lines. Every state in the country that's put it on a ballot has voted vouchers down.
Yeah, people care about their taxpayer dollars being spent responsibly. They care about kids being safe.
And I will tell you,
learning, you know,
we have a lot of people that their kids use ESAs. They are special needs kids that go to specialized schools, but they don't like the universal program because, number one, it has pushed their special needs kids to the back burner. It's harder to get things approved for them. It takes a lot longer for them to get their needs met through the program, because so many people are now in the program. And also they believe in strong public schools, and also understand that, there are some instances where, you might need a more specialized education if your student has high needs. And so that's what Save Our Schools advocates for. We advocate for right now voucher reform, but rolling it back, not getting rid of it totally, but leaving it for those with the highest needs, for special education students, how the program was originally intended, before it went universal in 2022. Is that our last slide? I thought we had another one. There we go.
So I know we've shared a lot of really disappointing and depressing information with you, and I don't want to leave you with, cool, here's some really sad news. The good news is there is actually a lot that you can do about it. Lita and I both run, and we have several other folks who run what we call our CAT team, community action teams. Those are regional groups where we help people take action in support of public schools and voucher reform. If you're interested in getting like a weekly newsletter and updates from us in that regard, you can go to that website there, and depending on where you are in the Valley, we'll connect you with the appropriate person. We help people stay up to date on what's happening in the legislature, in their local school boards, and at the Department of Education. And we also feel really strongly about helping register voters and help people testify, like at committee hearings and things about our public schools. And we do a lot of work with our partner organization, Save Our Schools Arizona, to support pro-public education officials and candidates running for office. Not everyone's comfortable, knocking on doors or going and speaking at the Capitol, but there are a lot of other actions that people can take in support of students and staff and families across the state in public education.
Why does it not like me? There we
go. We also right now have often email campaigns if you're interested in emailing your lawmaker. I think we have one right now just encouraging them as they work on the budget to prioritize including some of these common sense reforms in their conversations and in their negotiations. Right now, request to speak is we're getting towards the end of the bills, part of the legislative session. So might be a little late for that right now, but we also train people on how to use that program to help make their voice heard down at the state legislature. And again, if you're interested in joining us or even just getting our emails or getting one of these cool Arizona Loves Public Schools t-shirts, there's some information on the slide here for how you can find that. And we, of course, be happy to answer any questions that you might have or comments, concerns, anything like that.
And I have to plug, we're on all the socials. We have all the socials for our Save Our Schools Arizona and Save Our Schools Arizona Network. Network is not on Threads or TikTok, but we're on a lot. And we cross-post a lot. And we have lots of great events. And I do the social media posting. So I
I
always
was gonna say, we have a
I always
fantastic
got to give it a
social
plug.
media coordinator. It's Lita. She does incredible work. And sometimes people who are in other nonprofit spaces, when they find out that it's pretty much just Lita, they're shocked because we have a incredibly robust social media presence. And they think, you know, she's really doing the work of like 12 people all the time.
We probably post too much, but what I've learned, and this is one thing I want to share. I have to plug social media because I know it's hard and I have my issues with it as well, especially being a parent of teens. But this is the thing about social media. This is the world we live in. And the thing about social media is, and I always have to remind myself, is that I know this information, like Jen and I, IEPs, 504s, we're sitting here talking about it, and it's like we forget that not everybody knows. So like, that's the whole point, is there's so many ripple effects when we have like these trainings. There's 14 of you here today, but if you go talk to one friend, you know, if everybody goes and talks to one friend, that's that many more people that have heard about it or that are educated or that might be interested. And that's not to say you're going to go give them our whole presentation, right? It's just mentioning it. It's just so they are aware, because that's that's the goal, is to build awareness so people know. We're not trying to make people, you know, think a certain way or, you know, sway everybody's minds and opinions. We just really want people to be educated so they can make the best choices for themselves, and the state and our kids and so on and so forth. So that's our goal, is just to give you the information and hope that you find it useful, and share it.
Thank you again for inviting us to present with you today and for your patient attention.
Now, I have a couple of things I'd like to mention. One is that, you know, I think that Governor Hobbs has been trying to push through some things that would be beneficial to our school systems, but she's not getting a lot of support. And so, you know, my assumption is that she needs, we need to take a look at how we do that, because it's not that it isn't there, it's just simply not being supported. The other piece is I went to another club and saw Laura Metcalf, who's running for the Maricopa County Superintendent of Schools. And she made us aware of the fact that there are $5 to $6 million missing out of that budget, and there's currently a forensic audit being done. Now, the current superintendent is running for a third term, who has refused any accountability for that. So we have a lot of widespread issues, and I think the more informed we are, the better we are able, you know, then to vote accordingly and to support what you're doing. And I've long held that vouchers do erode the public systems, and I think that's tragic. So thank you for your time here today. Are you aware of the forensic accounting in the Maricopa?
I am, yes. I've met Dr. Metcalf a few times, and yes, she's thankfully bringing a lot of attention to some of the issues in that. And that's the Maricopa County level school superintendent that she's running for. Of course, if you're following our social media already, you've probably heard a lot about our state superintendent of schools, Tom Horn, which that's a whole other story we don't have time to get into today.
Yeah, I will say
Thank you,
too, so Save Our Schools Arizona Network is our education arm, right? So we come, we do presentations, we answer questions. We do have the Save Our Schools Arizona PAC side, and we do get involved on that side in elections. We do endorse candidates. Both we stick to legislative districts and school boards because we feel like those have the biggest impact on education, since the legislature helps determine the budget. We will, you know, go into governor. We did it at the last election at, you know, certain offices, and of course, our state superintendent, but we don't go, you know, to city council. We don't usually do like, you know, presidential federal stuff we don't get involved in, but we do endorsements, and we have already started rolling out endorsements of legislative candidates on that side of our arm. School board has not turned in signatures yet, so those endorsements will be after signatures are turned in. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, we do that on our other side.
Does anybody else have any questions? It feels to me like the selling point of getting out of failing schools and this universal ESA program that was just went into effect in 2022, created like a circular firing squad for the public education, because we've created now failing schools with this program.
Because we've starved
And
them of resources. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
If you'd like some more reading on that, I've got several books I can recommend. I'll email you if you're interested.
And one thing to note that I think a lot of people don't realize, because like, again, we've been in this and doing this fight, is this has been going on for decades. This is not all of a sudden because these universal vouchers was passed. It's been systematically happening, and it started a long time ago. And we won't get into it, and we're not involved in it right now because that's not our key focus, but it stems back to a lot of different things that have happened in Arizona along education for decades. And so it's coming to a boiling point and it's spreading to other places. But the great news, and I want to leave you with something positive, is I don't know if you followed it all, but Texas shot down universal vouchers. I think Governor Abbott brought it to them 5 times this session, and every single time they shot it down. And that had to be bipartisan. Can't just be one side, right? And Tennessee
as well, right?
What?
Didn't Tennessee just as
Yes.
well?
Most recently, Tennessee did as well. And yeah, like Sharon, who is our education research director, and Beth, you know, have been asked to go places and give presentations because unfortunately Arizona is the cautionary tale. But I want to say, I always want to remind people that sadly we're bearing the brunt of it, but good things are happening other places because of us. And so spreading that information has a ripple effect throughout the entire country, not just our state. So good things happen.
Yes, it goes back to the program that we had last month. Your vote matters more than you think it does.
Yeah.
So we are at time for our meeting today. Does anybody have one last question?
If there was
Okay.
one number one thing that we could do to help this issue, what would it be?
Well,
just the consumer that's out there and concerned.
We can't get too political, but the reality is we need a pro-public education majority in our legislature. So our governor can then somebody mentioned that, like Governor Hobbs wants to do these things, but the reality is the legislature is short of pro-public education candidates right now, or people in office, not candidates. There are plenty of candidates out there running. So honestly, whatever you can do to help spread that message and encourage people to know who those pro-public education people are, and help them get into office so we can then actually do real work at the state level. That's probably the number one thing I would say.
And I would add just that it's rare that I've met, I can't actually think of an example of when I've met a person who's learned about this, like the type of thing we present in our roadshow, and isn't mad about it or shocked about it. And so I just feel like helping build awareness with the people in your network that some of these things are happening with their taxpayer dollars. I think for the most part is just spreading awareness and helping people see the problem, and then that might inspire them to take some further action.
Yeah, and if you're the member of another group and you want us to come present to another group, or just sharing our information and giving them to other groups, like we're happy to do these online, in person, all over the state. So we have a wide network that is happy to do it and actually thoroughly enjoys this. So
absolutely. And if you visit our website, and sorry, Diane, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to on follow up to Lisa's question. Is there a list of legislators or that are recommended that tend to be pro-education somewhere?
The website is in the works. We have put out some endorsements. We are not done. It's just started last week, so they are rolling. And there is a website in the works. So if you do follow us on social media, you will be privy to that information. And you are always more than welcome. I'll put my email in the chat. You are always more than welcome to email me and I can get you that information because like I said, I work on both the coordinating, organizing side and also the social media marketing comm side. So I am a good contact for that information. I'm going to put my email in the chat right now.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. We sure appreciate you guys. And if any other questions come up, you're also welcome to email either of us. I'll include my email in the chat if that's helpful as well.
And you can always hop, if you forget them, you can always hop on one of the websites and email somebody. There's all kinds of information there. So we're easy to find. Thank you.
I have their emails too. So if you want to reach out to me, I can provide that to you too.
Thank you
Thank
again,
you
Lori, for
so
inviting
much.
me.
Very
Thank you.
much.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so
Thank
much. It was
you.
excellent.
Was fantastic.
It was excellent.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.